pour les Canadiens. Évidemment, M. Trudeau
Obviously,
et Mme Freeland
Mr. Trudeau
n'étaient pas prêts.
and Ms. Freeland were not ready.
Et il nous faut un plan.
And we need a
Un
plan.
plan pour mettre le Canada en
A
premier.
plan
Un
to put
plan
Canada first.
pour l'économie.
A plan for
et
the
la
economy
sécurité du Canada.
and for the
Parlons
security of
des
Canada.
vraies affaires et prennent en compte
So
de la
taking
réalité
about these three matters and
dans
taking
laquelle
into
nous nous
account the reality in which we
sur le
find
plan
ourselves.
économique.
On the
Notre
economic
économie
front,
a une faiblesse
our
plus sévère
economy
que
has
depuis
the
la
most
Grande
severe
Dépression,
weakness
avant
since the Great
la menace
Depression,
de ces tariffs.
and that's before the
Notre
threat of these
PIB
tariffs.
per capita est en chute libre.
The
Ça
GDP
fait
per capita
6
is
semestres
plummeting.
consécutifs
For
que
6
notre PIB
consecutive
per capita
semesters, our per
tombe.
capita GDP has fallen.
Notre PIB per capita a tombé plus
Our
que
per
tous les
capita
autres
GDP
pays
has
du
fallen
G7
more
depuis
than
l'année
every other
2019,
G7
soi-disant
country
l'année
since
avant COVID.
2019, which is the year before
Notre
COVID.
PIB per capita est en
Our per
effet
capita
plus petit
GDP is in fact
10 ans,
smaller
lorsque
than it was 10
l'économie
years ago
américaine per capita
when the U.S.
a augmenté de
economy
18%.
per capita had climbed by
Et malgré le
18%.
fait que le premier entre 2000 et 2014,
Despite the fact that between
le Canada
2000
a
and
attiré
2014,
plus d'investissements
Canada
des
attracted
États-Unis
more investment
que
from the
l'inverse.
U.S. than
Depuis 9 ans, on
the
a vu
reverse.
un demi-billion
For the last
de
9
dollars
years, we have seen
net
half a
quitter
billion
le
dollars net
pour
leave
investir
Canada
aux États-Unis.
to be invested in the
Ça
United
veut dire
States.
500 milliards de dollars,
That
mesurés en
means
dollars américains,
500 billion
quitté le
US
Canada
dollars have left
plus
Canada,
que le montant qui est revenu.
in addition
Les
or
Canadiens,
more than
le
the
quart
amount
des
that has
Canadiens
come
vivent en
back.
pauvreté. 2 millions Canadiens
Canadians
doivent faire
are
recours
living in
aux
poverty.
banques alimentaires.
2 million Canadians need to
Un
use
quart de
food
nos
banks.
enfants ne mangent
A
pas
quarter of our
assez.
children
Nous
are
avons
not
le
eating
pire
enough.
endettement des familles.
We have the worst
tous les pays du
family
G7 et la
debt
pire
situation among all
inflation
G7 nations,
immobilière
and the
qui a causé la
worst
crise
real
de
estate
logement.
inflation that
Donc,
has
nous
caused the
sommes dans
housing
une position
crisis.
économique de faiblesse
We
après
find
9 ans.
ourselves in
Des
a position of
augmentations de
economic
taxes,
weakness
d'impôts,
after
de
9
dettes
years
et
of
bureaucratie
increased
imposées
taxes
par Justin Trudeau.
and debt and
Et
bureaucracy by
malgré
Justin
le fait
Trudeau.
que M. Trudeau a eu 3 présidents
Despite the fact
et 9
that
ans,
Mr. Trudeau
pas
had
réussi
3
à faire ce que
presidents
Stephen
and 9
Harper a pu
years,
faire,
he was
c'est-à-dire
unable to do what
exempter le
Mr.
Canada
Harper
des
has
tarifs
done,
de bois d'œuvre
and
et
that's
des politiques de Buy
exempt
American.
Canada from softwood tariffs
un plan
and the Buy
économique.
American policies.
Donc,
We need
ce
an
que je
economic
propose,
plan. Therefore,
que
what I am proposing is the
Justin
following.
Trudeau mette à côté la partisanerie.
Justin Trudeau put
Et dans
partisanship
l'esprit d'une
aside,
canadienne,
and in a
il
spirit
accepte
of teamwork
de renverser
for Canada,
tous ces
that he agree
augmentations de taxes
to
et
reverse
impôts.
all those tax
Propose maintenant
increases.
des augmentations de
He is now
taxes
proposing tax
massives
increases
sur
that are
l'investissement
massive
et sur l'énergie.
on investments and energy.
C'était une mauvaise décision avant.
It was a
C'est
bad decision
impossible
before,
maintenant.
and now it's
Avec
impossible.
les tarifs de Trump et
With
les taxes
Trump's
de
tariffs
Trudeau,
and Trudeau's
notre économie
taxes,
serait
our
détruite.
economy will be
Donc, nous
destroyed.
revendiquons que M. Trudeau
We
annule
call on
ces
Mr.
augmentations
Trudeau
de taxes
to cancel
et
those
d'impôts.
tax increases.
Deuxièmement, il doit
Second,
annoncer aujourd'hui qu'il va accélérer
today he will announce that
l'approbation
he's going to accelerate the approval of natural resource projects in order to be able to be more self-sufficient and defend Canadian jobs.
sur la question de sécurité.
On the issue of security,
Nous avons des problèmes à régler et il nous faut un
we do
plan.
have problems
Parlons
to
des
solve, and we
frontières.
need a plan.
M. Trudeau
Speaking of the
a
borders,
avoué
Mr.
avoir
Trudeau
brisé
has
notre
admitted
système
that
d'immigration.
he broke our immigration system.
Il a mal géré la frontière en
He
permettant
mismanaged the border
99% des
by
conteneurs
allowing
d'entrée sans
99%
inspection.
of containers to come
Il
in
avoue
without
qu'il a
inspection.
permis au moins 2
He admits
combattants
that he
d'ISIS d'entrer au
allowed
Canada.
at least 2
Et nous
ISIS
avons un vrai problème.
combatants into Canada. We have a real problem.
Entre maintenant
Listen,
et le décembre
between now
prochain,
and next
2025,
December
il y a
2025,
4,9 millions
there are 4.9 million visitors to Canada who need to leave.
leur visa termine.
Their visa is up.
4,9 millions.
4.9 million between now and the next year. Yesterday, Minister Miller was asked what the plan is. He said that we're going to trust those 4.9 million people to voluntarily leave. Really? They're just going to leave voluntarily? 4.9 million people? It's Mr. Trudeau who admits that he made a mistake by allowing that number of people to come into Canada. He needs to present a plan to solve that. He also needs to present a plan for our military. Mr. Trudeau has destroyed our military with cuts, mismanagement, cancellation of the F-35 purchases. He couldn't even prevent China's weather balloon from coming into Canada's north. He had to ask for assistance from the U.S. We will need to rebuild our military. Today, I call on Mr. Trudeau to announce that he will reverse the $1 billion cuts annually that he has already put in place on military spending, and to present to us a plan to give our military more resources by eliminating spending elsewhere and by strengthening our common defense in North America. That is necessary. And drugs? We don't need to prevent drugs for President Trump. It's for our own citizens. We have lost 47,000 Canadians to overdoses. That's more than we lost in the Second World War. An increase of 200% in terms of overdoses since Justin Trudeau came into power, and his decision to liberalize drugs. Mr. Trudeau needs to put aside partisanship, and in a Team Canada spirit, he needs to admit that he was wrong to liberalize drugs. He needs to prohibit drugs, stop financing opioids, and put drug criminals in prison. He also needs to conduct real inspections to prevent the illegal importation of fentanyl and its ingredients. And that's not for Mr. Trump, that's for our citizens. We need to protect our economy, our security. We need to do this in order to maintain our trade relationship that is so important with our largest ally, the United States. We need a prime minister who has the strength and intelligence and who is willing to stand up against attacks from other political leaders from other countries. I understand that Mr. Trump wants to protect his own workers and his security. Here in Canada, we need a prime minister who will also defend our workers finally, our security, by putting Canada first. That's what I will do.
Thank you very much for coming, everyone. Now in English. The United States is the greatest economic and military superpower in the history of the world, and they are our neighbor. The U.S. is responsible for $1.2 trillion of our trade. We trade almost twice as much with the Americans as we trade with the rest of the world combined. Trade with the U.S. is 40% of our economy. President Trump yesterday made an unjustified threat of a 25% tariff on our already weak and shrinking economy. Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland were surprised, amazingly. Everyone else knew something like this could be coming because President Trump had been talking about it for years on the campaign trail. Yet 20 days ago, Chrystia Freeland said, "Don't worry, Canada will be fine." Apparently, neither she nor Justin Trudeau were following what the incoming president was saying. And now, we must take account and we must be honest with our unprecedented weakness. After 9 years of Prime Minister Trudeau, our GDP is smaller than it was when he took off, per capita is smaller than it was when he took office. In fact, our per capita GDP has dropped more than any other G7 country since the year before COVID. We have the most indebted households. We've had the worst housing inflation. A quarter of our people are in poverty. 2 million people line up in food banks. Food prices have risen 37% faster in Canada than in the United States of America. Our economy is teetering on the brink of collapse. And now we face this renewed threat. We need a plan to put Canada first on the economy and on security. So, to start with, on the economy, I'm calling on Prime Minister Trudeau to put partisanship aside and in the spirit of Team Canada to accept that he cannot go ahead with quadrupling the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. This was an irresponsible policy to begin with, but combining this kind of crippling energy tax increase with potential tariffs from Donald Trump would push our economy into a nightmare and a tailspin. So let's put partisanship aside and axe the tax. Second, the Prime Minister has to put aside partisanship and, in the spirit of Team Canada, cancel his energy cap, which would see Alberta and Saskatchewan produce 35% less energy at a time when we need those jobs. It is our biggest industry and our biggest export. The incoming American president says he wants to cut gas prices in half. Well, the only way to do it will be to import more clean Canadian energy, so the Prime Minister has to stop this assault on our biggest industry. Next, he has to cancel all tax increases on work, investment, and making stuff in Canada. Finally, he needs to renew and restart the commitment to end the softwood lumber tariffs and the Buy America policies, just like Stephen Harper was successful in doing, even though Justin Trudeau has not been able to do that under 3 presidents and 9 years. On security. About a week ago, Justin Trudeau admitted that he broke our immigration system, and that brings new challenges. His own published documents show there are 4.9 million people here temporarily that are supposed to leave by December 31st of next year, 13 months from now. 4.9 million people. We asked what the plan was to track their departures, and yesterday his immigration minister said, we're just going to take people at their word. He admits that there have been 2 ISIS terrorists allowed into our country. What is the plan to protect our security and reinstate sovereignty over who is in our country? Military. Justin Trudeau has demolished our military with poor decisions, botched procurements, and wasted money. One thing he could do today is announce that his planned billion-dollar cut to the military is canceled, and then present a real plan to reallocate money away from lower priorities towards rebuilding our military and reinforcing our military security over North America. And finally, on drugs. I don't want to stop drug overdoses to please Donald Trump. I want to stop drug overdoses so that there's not one more mother with her face buried in a pillow sobbing that she just lost her kid after 47,000 other Canadians have died. That's more than we lost in the Second World War. A 200% annual increase in drug overdose deaths have resulted from Justin Trudeau's radical liberalization of drugs. Justin Trudeau must put partisanship aside, not just for the sake of Team Canada, but for the sake of our people, and fully reverse his liberalization of drugs. Ban them, prosecute those who traffic in them, secure our borders against the illegal importation of fentanyl ingredients, put people in treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free. That is necessary now more than ever. Look, President Trump has the right to put his workers and his nation's security first. I will put Canada's workers and Canada's security first. We need a Prime Minister with the strength and the smarts, the brains and the backbone to stand up for this country, to rebuild our security, our military, and our economy. That is what I will do. Let's bring it home.
Should Canada have less reliance on American trade, in your view?
That's a nice idea. It's a very nice idea. We live next door to the biggest economic and military superpower in the history of the world. We can fantasize about other trade partners, but I'm interested in reality. We've been fantasizing for the last 9 years, and look where it has got us. What we actually need to do is stand up for our economy by axing taxes, unleashing free enterprise, having a massive boom in our energy and resource production, and standing up for our country against unfair tariffs abroad.
Aside from all the measures that you laid out, would you be willing to retaliate?
If necessary.
Est-ce que le Canada devrait imposer des tarifs sur les États-Unis?
Si nécessaire.
You're asking the Prime Minister to put aside his partisanship. Will you put aside yours and join the government in a Team Canada approach?
I'm making nonpartisan suggestions today. But let me be clear. We don't need as a spectacle of a bunch of politicians sitting around tables, meeting, and holding photo ops. I know that would be a wonderful spectacle for all of you. You would all enjoy that kind of interpersonal theatrics. But what we really need is an action plan with tangibles. So bottom line, Trudeau's got to axe the carbon tax. He's got to lift the production cap on Canadian energy. He's got to rebuild our military and secure our borders. That is a real plan to protect our economy and our security and put Canada first, and that's more important than photo ops and meetings between politicians.
What do you think about the idea of Canada striking a separate bilateral agreement with the U.S., separate from Mexico? Do you endorse that idea?
Canada first. Let's put it this way. One, I only care about Canada. I want to put our country first. Two, America is responsible for over 60% of our trade. We trade more with the U.S. than we do with the rest of the world combined. I will do what is necessary to preserve and protect that relationship above all others.
$250 checks. Has your party decided if you support them? And can you also respond to the demands from the Bloc and NDP to expand it even further?
So, first of all, we will make our final decision and formalize it tomorrow at our caucus meeting, as always. But with our GDP collapsing, with $500 billion pouring out of our country, and with Canadians lined up at food banks, our priority is not to save you 10 cents on a bag of potato chips right before quadrupling the carbon tax on your heat, housing, gas, and groceries. What we need is a real common sense plan to slash bureaucracy and waste in order to bring down taxes, inflation, and interest rates. And we will answer. We also know that on the checks, Justin Trudeau has said, when he was asked about checks not long ago, he said, if you give out checks, you drive up inflation by exactly the same amount. If you have an economy with 10 apples and $10, it's $1 an apple. If you double the number of dollars in the economy to 20 and you still only have 10 apples, well, now it's $2 an apple. You're not actually increasing purchasing power by printing money, borrowing cash, and sending out checks. What that has done after 9 years of Trudeau has given us the worst inflation in 40 years, the worst housing price inflation in the G7. We have people living in poverty. They can't find homes. We need a real common sense plan to permanently axe the carbon tax, axe the sales tax on new homes so that Canadians can earn a powerful paycheck that buys affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods. Nous avons besoin d'un vrai plan
We need
pour
a
couper les
real
taxes et
plan
impôts
to cut
et
taxes,
permettre les gens de gagner des plus grands chèques de paie et
allow
pensions,
people
qui achètent de
to
nourriture et
earn
de logements
good
pour des
paychecks that will allow them to buy
communautés
food and housing